Hello everyone, this is your host Yashvi. Welcome back to a day in life of a teenager podcast. For some of y'all, this could be my first episode. For some of y'all, you already know that this is my second podcast. First वाला delete कर दिया था boards थे. But it's okay. Like, what is more important? That it is that we are back again. Some of y'all asked me a question कि podcast का नाम A Day in Life of a Teenager ही क्यों रखा? So there's this little thing of mine behind it. First of all, being a teenager is scary. But being a teenager in Gen Z is scarier. Teenagers के life में आजकल इतने problems है, but nobody talks about it. So here we are, talking about a day in life of a teenager. After all, the name says it all. So in today's generation, how is it like being a teenager? If I'm being honest, it is scary. We're constantly afraid कि लोग क्या कहेंगे. What if I fail? We need to fit in. We need to act cool. पर ये cool की परिभाषा exactly होती क्या है? अब तो सबको cool बनना है. हम teenagers के marks का pressure होता है. हाँ अब तुम लोग सोचोगे how can a single sheet of paper decide my future? It honestly doesn't. But your 10th and 12th की mark sheet is just like a ticket to good college and boom, फिर उसके बाद फ़र्क ही नहीं पड़ेगा. पर टीनेजर्स की लाइफ यहीं ख़त्म नहीं हुई. वी एज टीनेजर्स ऑफन थिंक कि हमारे पेरेंट्स हमारे सबसे बड़े दुश्मन हैं एंड सोशल मीडिया इज़ आवर बेस्ट फ्रेंड. वेल, मुझे भी कभी यही लगता था. बट लेट मी टेल यू माई डियर फ्रेंड, यू आर एब्सोल्युटली रॉन्ग. टेक्नोलॉजी जल्दी एडवांस हो रही है, पर एवरीथिंग हैज़ इट्स ओन प्रोज एंड कॉन्स. You have questions, you have answers, great ideas, and a few lousy ones. Dreams and fears you might never want to leave your room in the morning or dread going home at night. You might have a thing for someone in your class. Maybe you can text a person all the time, but you will freeze to talk to them IRL in real life. Perhaps you sit alone in the hallways at school during lunch, pretending you're busy. You're pretending you don't mind because you're busy on your cool phone. Or maybe you laugh and shriek with your friends so much that someone asks you to shut up already. Sometimes you dream of doing something awesome that helps the entire world. But sometimes you can barely help yourself. A teenager's world has a lot going on. Much more than most people realize. So today, let's talk about your world. Let's have some fun with it. Get serious when we need to. Wonder and explore and not necessarily have all the answers. Let's ask questions and hear how other teenagers have answered them. Maybe you'll hear them. Hear the voice of a friend speaking, a parent speaking, or a grandparent. Or it could be you yourself. You might listen to those voices and decide they're not talking to you, or something might ring inside. Maybe you'll say, I don't believe that, or yeah, that makes total sense. This podcast will work, to be honest, to be real. It will honor your strong spirit, your courage, your desire to do well, your fears, and more importantly, your worries. Have you ever surprised yourself by doing something impulsive, wacky, or maybe even dangerous? Something you did without even thinking or considering what could the consequences be. If you haven't yet, wait for it. The surprise is coming. That's partly because your brain is still growing up. It's still developing. The front section, which is called the prefrontal cortex, which controls reasoning and helps you slow down and think before you push the gas pedal to the floor. To be honest, teenage brains are different from the brains of children and adults. They're remarkable in several ways and better at some things like math, music, and languages than adult brains. Still, parts of your teenage brains are like a fancy iPad that has trouble connecting to Wi-Fi, with a camera that sometimes crashes and passwords that randomly disappear. A dodgy Wi-Fi connection is similar to developing prefrontal cortex. Yours is waiting around till you hit your mid-20s and it's going to completely come online and help control your impulses and emotions. Until that happens, the teen brain sometimes contribute to problems such as getting into fights, ouch, misinterpreting social cues or facial expressions. Well, that's awkward. Acting or speaking on impulse way in a way that you'll regret later. That never feels good. Some pretty risky business. Even a smart person can make dumb decisions after all. By the way, all of the above problems are for adults too, but generally not as often. The brain is so complex that a cube of brain meter that's 1 millimeter on every side. That's the thickness of a credit card. When government around the world decides that young people could get a driver's license as early as 16, vote as early as 18, or sign legal contracts at 21, I don't imagine they were not thinking about synapses, which is connections, and brain maturation. I won't tell them if you don't, but just when you thought you had to wait for years for a complete brain, there's good news. The brain region called the amygdala, where reactions such as pleasure, fear, and aggression come from. It is fully online. So what's the difference? To know that your brain isn't fully developed, is it the perfect excuse for making bad decisions? I couldn't help it. My brain made me do it. No, you can't really get away with that after all. Hopefully, you also have lots of good examples of how to handle decisions and turn down dodgy schemes. Knowing that your brain is still searching for a strong Wi-Fi signal, that some important connections haven't been made yet, can be useful. It takes some stress out of life. It helps you do a lot of things. We have an old saying for put the brake on, think twice, take a deep breath, count to 10. Let's talk about happiness. So the first step towards living a happy life is to treat every other human with kindness. There are several steps after that, but I can't remember them right now. This is a famous quote which was quoted by the Dalai Lama. We could all use a recipe for how to be happy, mix this and that, stir with that and bake for 30 minutes. If some chef could come up with happiness on twist, serve it over rice, charge big bucks, we'd line up to pay and eat. What a great thing to do, right? Walk into a fancy restaurant with your friends, maybe get a table with a view and order up a big dish of happiness for everyone. Share the bill, add a generous tip and stroll out smiling. Okay, enough of fantasizing. But how can we be happy, really? Isn't the world so messed up that no one can ever be happy? How can anyone be light-hearted when children are dying from hunger, the polar ice caps are melting and bombs are going off in marketplaces, plus 1,000 other terrible social problems like your best friend just had a breakup, and in a dozen personal issues like you're not doing well mentally and being happy starts to look impossible. But trust me, it's not. It's actually very, very possible. And believe it or not, there is a kind of recipe for happiness. But you have to gather the ingredients and do the cooking. Just reading a recipe isn't enough. If you want to enjoy tikka masala, pizza, burger, or may it be any other food, you have to do way more than read about them. Same with happiness. And don't be shy about asking for help from an experienced happiness cook. Parents and grandparents, aunties and uncles, especially the cheerful ones, may surprise you with excellent tips for whipping up a batch of happiness. Before you begin making a mess in the happiness kitchen, remember, it's okay to have an off day sometimes. Not every day is sunny. Maybe sadness is natural and even important. It can teach us how to understand how others feel and help us become more emotionally mature. So here's the recipe, no charge. I'd love for you to cook it up and then give it a review. Feel free to take it as an experiment. You can leave out on a few things to stir in some others. Chocolate could be a crucial addition. Experiences has shown that some basic elements are required, like sugar and flour in a cake recipe. Friendship, kindness, and gratitude seem to be essential for making happiness. happiness. This recipe feeds you first and then as many as people you want. Use a lot of the following. The more of each ingredient you have, the better your recipe turns out. Nobody cares which ingredient you start with. Just start. Mix acceptance of yourself. Be sure to use the organic variety, the kind of acceptance that comes without comparisons between you and anyone else. Understanding what you can control and what you can't. Gratitude, the best sweetener. Good friends, but be one to get one. Kindness, always in style. Exercise, sports, dance, yoga, or walk, whatever. Just move it. Help someone. Be a peer, a mentor. Visit an old person. Volunteer at a kids' camp. Clean your local beach or park. Work at a free kitchen. Or music. Make it yourself. Download it. Go to a concert, check out a flash mob, plug in your headphones, join the school choir, form a band. Perspective, there are so many, right? Will something that bothers me right now really matter to me in 5 days, in 5 months, or 5 years? If it doesn't, do it. Just do it. Do something you enjoy. You can double up on this with exercise or music ingredients, or add your own flair. Spend time in nature, sit by a river, walk through a garden, hike through a forest, dive into a lake. Go outside at night and find the moon. Take a picnic to the top of a hill at sunset. By yourself or with friends. When you're out in nature, you usually won't feel lonely. Alone maybe, but not lonely. Probably not. With this recipe, you're going to get one of the best of both worlds. Some instant increase in happiness and some increase that shows up over time. If you're really wanting to help yourself feel better now, you might heap some of the following onto top of what you're cooking and garnish it. Write in a journal. Watch a funny YouTube video. Organize your notebook. Weird, right? But it can feel so productive. Cook, follow a recipe, or maybe create something original. After all, we are all creators. Feed friends or sit down to a formal feast all by yourself. Eat on a blanket outside or set your table as if royalty were coming to dine. You are a royalty too. It's fun. Pet an animal. That's the reason they are called pets. This recipe has a bit of magic in it. Eat as much of this you want. You'll never be too full. Share your cooking with friends, family, and even strangers. You can create lightheartedness, well-being, and contentment. Awesome thoughts, right? The dish you bake is designed to make long-term happiness rather than short-term pleasure. Those two are very different things. Anyway, that's for a different podcast episode. Anyone who has ever gone to an ice cream binge can tell you. And the same principle applies in more complex situations. What do you really want? Connections that are often the basis of long-lasting happiness. You want to connect with yourself, your spirit, emotions, intellect, your family, your friends, strangers, random people. You may want connections with people, with animals, or the natural world. Connections are at the core of happiness. As I said, you can never get full of happiness recipe and also my podcast. But maybe for today, this much is enough. So that was your host Yashvi signing off. Make sure to give us a rating, follow us on IG and YouTube. The link or the handle is in the description of my podcast. Meet you all next Wednesday. Up till then, goodbye and take care.